Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. This is the evening of New Year's Eve. Everyone is home. Television is on. I'm sorry. Sun is over there reading. But I wanted to do my December 2024 wrap up and 2024 wrap up. So visit my yearly goals as well as do my monthly wrap up, because tomorrow, January 1st, I don't want to put makeup on. So I have makeup on today. My hair's kind of a mess, but we're gonna go with it. So let's get started. Okay, I'm sorry for that cut there, and my camera is crooked. But I forgot to bring my books over, so I had to go get those. Anyway, so in December, I read 19 books, and I DNF'd one, which was Cremains of the Day by Misty Simon. I told you I was gonna do it, and I did it. And my average rating was 3.7. Now, of my format, I had 11 in print. I think they're all right here. Might have been a library book that went back, I'm not sure. 4 ebooks and 4 audiobooks. That's pretty good for me. And then genres. I didn't do any tandem reads because I didn't have a Shakespeare play this month. I don't do those during December. Of my genres, now, I don't consider classics a genre, but I do note when I have a classic, which to me is a book at least 50 years old that is still in print or in print again. And I had 3 of those, so that's good. And then as for my genre breakdown, 4 were general fiction, 3 were current events / politics. You know, those ones where I kind of tell you, if you don't want to read it, get out, you know, you can leave my weekly update early. 3 mystery, 2 historical fiction, 2 horror, 1 nature or science nonfiction, 1 memoir, 1 science fiction, and 1 mythology or mythology retelling. So let me go through the books that I read with the ones that are here. Now, if you haven't seen this before, the way I do my books is I do it like whether or not I would recommend them. So I have the books where I'm like, they're up in the air. I'm still trying to figure out my thoughts, blah, blah, blah. I don't have any of those this month, so. And then the next one is books I would not recommend. And then books I'd recommend that either I'd only recommend them to some people or I'd recommend them with some caveats, whatever. And then highly recommended, I would pretty much universally recommend this book, kind of enthusiastically. And then 5 stars, a 5-star book is a all-time favorite. So I have one book that I would not recommend, and that is White Rural Rage by Tom Schaller and Paul Waldman. This is one of the books written before the election, for the election, that I read after the election books. And this one tries to explain why white residents of rural areas keep voting for Republicans instead of for Democrats who actually have policies that would help them. I thought it was overly negative towards that. Like, that's not helpful. It didn't need to look down on these people. That's not going to help things. And then it also didn't have like a call to action. Its call to action was these people need to elect better Republicans, which that's weird. But anyway, so I just didn't think that was a successful book at all. Okay, and then I have, let me count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 9 books that I would recommend. Maybe not to everybody, maybe with some caveats, maybe not as enthusiastically. The first one was Sister, Mother, Warrior by Vanessa Riley. This is the library book I don't have because this was for my library book club. This talks about the Haitian Revolution. There's 2 stories in it, one of which is interesting and one of didn't really work for me, and I didn't feel like the 2 stories worked together well. That was my issue with that book. The next one that's kind of, you know, I would recommend it maybe, is this one, Christmas and Other Horrors. This is a short story collection of winter holiday themed horror stories. So it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus, Solstice, whatever. They're all in here. The reason why this isn't as a wholehearted recommendation as I would normally give, as I give most short story collections, is because in any short story collection, especially an anthology where you have different writers, There are some hits, there were some misses. That's just the nature of it. This one tended to have more misses than hits. There were some good stories in it. The one that really sticks with me is one called The Lord of Misrule. Let me see if I can remember who that one's by. Lord of Misrule was by M. Rickert. That one just really sticks with me, but there are other ones that just didn't work at all for me. This is not a book that's going to stay on my keeper shelf, but it was fine for holiday reading. So if you're looking for some holiday horror, there you go. There's an option. Okay, the next one is Kiss Me at Christmas. So I enjoyed this book. It is a Hallmark movie on the page. It is just what I needed at Christmas. To be fair, if I'd read it any other time of year, I probably wouldn't have finished it because it just is such a light romance. But that was what I needed at this point of the year. And I will be getting another book by this author next year at this time. So this book fits for fits into a very specific slot, but it fits into that slot very well, which is your Christmas Hallmark movies on the page. So I enjoyed it for what it was. It gave me the escape that I needed at the holiday season. I am going to pass this on to my family so they can read it. There you go. Okay, and then I have another audiobook I listened to called The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory, American Evangelicals in an Age of Extremism by Tim Alberta. So the reason this one is here is because this is a book that I wouldn't recommend to everybody, because Tim Alberta is writing basically to a Christian audience. He uses a lot of church lingo, especially evangelical church lingo. And I think that anyone who hasn't had at least a period in their life at some point where they went to church might be a little perplexed by this book. So I just think it has a more limited audience. I thought it was very good though. So if you are interested in why evangelicals do the things that they do, this is actually a really good book for that. Tim Alberta was raised in the evangelical church. His father was an evangelical pastor. So he comes to it with a very personal point of view, which I haven't seen in the other books on this topic that I've read, which is why this one sticks with me more. But again, I think the audience on this one's a little bit limited. And the next one I have is In the Wrong Place. So we're going to skip that one because that one should be highly recommended. So the one after that I have is a audio novella I listened to. It's The Very First Damned Thing by Jodi Taylor. So this is a prequel to the first book of the Chronicles of St. Mary. So this is a series that Bookish Best Friend and my friend Susan loved. Well, Bookish Best Friend loves it. Susan loved it. And I have read the first one and I did really enjoy it. So I just had this prequel sitting in my Audible queue. So I picked it up to listen to it because I wanted something short at the end of the year. And there's nothing wrong with it, except it's been so long since I read the first one that I couldn't always follow what was going on. I think it probably is a very good prequel. It doesn't, you need to read it closer to reading the beginning of the series, just so you remember what's going on. It was a me thing, really, on that one. Then I read a couple like Amazon singles or Amazon original stories. They're standalone, so they count as books. I always read those at the end of the year to kind of clear them out. And this one that I read, I'd had for a couple of years. It's called Zenith Man by Jennifer Hay. Jennifer Hay is an author I've read in the past and have really enjoyed. This story was fine. It was a fine story. It didn't take very long to read. It was fine. It wasn't anything to write home about. I didn't rock my world. I read another one that did, and we'll get to that one, but I think, and it might have even just been in comparison. And this one was just, as I said, I'm not going to remember it, but it was fine. It's off my Kindle now. And then I have this one, Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. So you probably haven't seen my book haul yet, but I now have all of Jennifer Saint's books because I had Ariadne and Hera through Book of the Month, and then my family got me the other two, so I have all four. So I asked my daughter which one I should read first, and she said Ariadne because I know she's going to want to read it. And I think this was probably a good place to start because I read, and you'll see this when you see my book haul, I read the synopsis of Atalanta. Yes, Atalanta. And it sounds like, it does sound like there's a tie between these two books. So I don't know for sure because I haven't read it yet, but I think this was a good place to start. I enjoyed it. There are a lot of Greek mythology retellings out there. And, it's hard when you have Natalie Haynes, and, it's hard for anyone to live up to Natalie Haynes in my mind. And this was fine. The reason I put it in this category is there were scenes in this book that I had to read several times to figure out what was going on. They just weren't written clearly. This is a debut novel. I fully expect it's something that's going to improve in later books. But I think the story is still interesting. I did not know the story of Ariadne and Phaedra. Phaedra is also in this. I did not really know that story going into this, so it was new to me, as opposed to like reading Stoneblind, where I did know the story of Medusa. So that was fun. I enjoyed it. It just probably, there was room for improvement. Okay. Oh, and finally, this is the last book I finished. I just finished it today, and it is a play, and it is The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie, if you can see that. This is the longest running play. It's been running for God knows how long in the West End. I think the only time it hasn't been running in the West End is when it closed down for COVID, and it opened in 1952. So we're, 72 years minus COVID years? It's still going. This is a play version. Now, the thing about Agatha Christie is she's known as a novelist and a short story writer, but she was actually a really good playwright as well. These are not stories other people wrote of Agatha Christie works. These are written by Agatha Christie. And a while ago, I purchased two. I purchased this one and Witness for the Prosecution. I was actually going to try to squeeze in a Witness for the Prosecution as well. But then I thought, if Angelia really likes doing her endless drama and is looking for plays for like 2026, because we're not even 2025 as I'm filming this and I'm already talking about that, maybe she would include Witness for the Prosecution, because that's actually better than this from what I hear. I haven't read it yet. This is not bad. It is not bad. The reason I put it here and not in the highly recommended is because I have read the story it was based on, which is Three Blind Mice. I don't think you can get that story in the UK. I think I read somewhere that story you cannot get in the UK. I thought this story worked better as a short story than a play. I mean, it was fine. I would love to see this. I would love to see a production of this, but I think the story itself just was more effective in short story form. And that could be different if I saw a production. Who knows? So there you go. Okay, now highly recommended. Let me go back and do the one that I put in the wrong category, and that's Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. This is a book that's been on a lot of TBRs for me in the past, and I haven't gotten to it. I was supposed to read it for a book club and then couldn't make the book club, but I finally got it done, and it's very good. It is an almost mythological horror story with monsters, and it deals with the Ku Klux Klan and racism, and it's just really effectively done. I was really impressed by it. The one thing that kind of held it back a little bit with me, and again, me issue, is there is dialogue that is written in dialect, and I find that hard to read. So I didn't always understand what they were saying. But I did really enjoy it, and I would highly recommend it. Okay, the next ones that were highly recommended. My pile is not in order, so sorry. This is one that I did as a buddy read with Lori at Books, Ink, and Paper. And this is The Examiner by Janice Hallett. This is her most recent book. And the setup is we're looking at a graduate program. It's like a fine art / business graduate program. And the way their program is set up is after all the coursework is done, an instructor not in the program, maybe even not even at that school, looks at all the work to make sure the grading is fair. That's just something that they do. And that is the examiner. So this book sets up, we kind of get a message from the examiner, and the examiner says, I've read this and I think someone might have died. And then we go back in Janice Hallett, style through text messages and emails and all sorts of things, because she writes multimedia, to find out what happened. It is a great story. It is a wild story. There were twists I did not see coming. Did not guess the ending at all. Really, really good. It is most like, if you're going to compare it to one of her previous books, it's most like The Appeal. It really did feel like The Appeal to me. A little bit darker though. It's not a 5-star only because there's an element of technology in it, which is not, to be fair, is not necessary to know, to understand, to get the story. But I didn't understand it, and I knew I didn't understand it, and it kind of bugged me a little because I'm not a technology person. But other than that, fantastic book. Janice Hallett, fantastic author. Pick her up and read her. As for places to start with Janice Hallett, I would suggest starting with The Appeal and just going from there. But this one's excellent. Okay, sorry for that little jump. My camera fell. Okay, now my next highly recommended is an essay collection. And this one is Animals Strike Curious Poses by Elena Passarello. This is a collection of essays where she looks at different, like, real animals that were immortalized in some way by humans throughout history. And we have quite a few. We start with a woolly mammoth that was excavated. We have Coco the gorilla. Is that what? Yeah, Coco was a gorilla. We have a sea tortoise. We have all sorts of things in here. And the stories are, they're essays, but they also kind of feel like stories. They have different feelings. She plays with form a little bit. I loved this. There was some of this. There is a spine of sadness in this because humans don't always treat animals with respect, and that comes through. But there's also humor and delightful things. Really enjoyed this. I would recommend it to anybody to read. I think if you're looking for an essay collection that to kind of take your mind off things, this is a great one. And that is Animals Strike Curious Poses by Elena Passarello. Okay. Next one. Oh, the next one I have is, this was from my book club. It's The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. This did win the Book of the Year in 2017 with Book of the Month. So this tells the story of Cyril Avery, who's not a real Avery, you know, who is a young man born in Ireland shortly after World War II, and it's pretty much his entire life growing up in a really weird family situation and then dealing with his sexuality and things that happen. So it is one of those walk through someone's entire life kind of books. Very moving, very well written. The thing that bugged me about this book is there's one character I wanted to get to know better. And I felt like I didn't get enough of that character. But other than that, I really enjoyed this book. And we had a good discussion about it in my book club. This is one Bookish Best Friend's been trying to get me to read for a while. So she finally did it with book club, but definitely highly recommended. The Heart's Invisible Furies. Okay. Oh, and then I have, sorry, I keep reaching over here because my pile's not in order. My Agatha Christie for the month, which is The Moving Finger. This is a Miss Marple book, but it is not a Miss Marple book, and that Miss Marple is barely in it. So just wipe from your mind that it is a Miss Marple book, and you will enjoy this book because it's actually a really good mystery. And it's a really fun story to follow. It's got great characters, but if you're sitting there like I was wondering where's Miss Marple, it's going to detract a little bit. She does show up. She shows up on page, I even tabbed it, 167, and she's barely in it. But just don't focus on it. Just focus on everybody else. But really delightful story. This is a very English village mystery, which I like. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I got hung up on the Miss Marple thing, but you know, whatever. Okay, what do we have after that? Oh, then I have another buddy read. I did this one with Suey at Suey's Book Banner. And this is Elanor Olaf. It's Completely Fine. And this was also the last book I had to read off my self-destruct list. So I got that done. This is by Gail Honeyman, and it is about Elanor Olaf, who is a slightly odd woman. She sees the world in a slightly odd way, and I will say that at the beginning of the book, I thought something about her. I thought that was what we were talking about. And as the book goes along and you understand her past and her life, you realize that was not what was going on. There were parts of this book which are absolutely heartbreaking, but it is done with a lot of heart. I really enjoyed it, and I'm kind of ashamed that it took me so long to read, but there you go. Elanor Olaf is Completely Fine. Good book. Great book. And, then I reread My Ántonia by Willa Cather. So I read this supposedly in high school, and after reading this, I think I read an abridged version because This book is divided into 3 sections, and the first section felt really familiar to me, and the second section was completely new, and then the third section felt familiar again. And I think that what I read didn't have the middle section on it. But that being said, it was a beautiful book. It was like Little House on the Prairie, all grown up. It's I found it a little bit darker than O Pioneers, which is another book in sort of her Prairie series or whatever she calls it. And I thought this was a better written book, but definitely this one will stick with you after you read it. I really loved it. And then finally, in my highly recommended, was my other Amazon original story that I read, which I actually didn't own. I just found, and I just got it through Prime Reading because it had just come out. And that is The Answer is No by Frederick Bachman. And this is about a guy whose life is ruined by a frying pan. It is kind of an absurd story, but it is really delightful. I read it while getting a pedicure, which made it even more delightful. It reminded me I need to read more Frederick Bachman. I've been going through my spreadsheet, getting it ready for 2025, and I realized I have Beartown that I need to get to, and I haven't, and I've heard nothing but good things about it, but I really liked Frederick Bachman's writing, and I've read a couple of his other books and loved them. So definitely, it's a fun, just a delightful little story. They'll kind of make you feel good. So I would pick that one up if you have access to it through Amazon, and it is called The Answer is No. I do believe there is an audio of it on Audible. So I then had 2 5-star books, and they're both nonfiction. The first one was Attack from Within, How Disinformation is Sabotaging America by Barbara McQuade. This book is so important, I think. But I would also say don't read it unless you're kind of okay with political stuff right now, because it's hard. I mean, a lot of us are having a hard time with the way the election went. And this is another one of those books like White Rural Rage and The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory that were written for the election, and it's a little different when you read it after the election. But this one I think is useful. I shouldn't say the other one. Well, White Rural Rage was not useful, but this one actually has, action items for you to do, and it helps you to combat disinformation. She explains exactly what it is, because it's not just saying wrong stuff. She goes into exactly what it is, how it's used, the psychology behind it, and why we're susceptible to it. She talks about how it has been used in American politics over the last 8 to 10 years. Yeah. And she also gives you steps to how, what we can do to combat it. Some of it is things that the government can do, but there are also things you can do on a personal level. And I just think this is so important. So if you aren't ready to read this now, and you're in the United States, I understand, but I really would recommend trying to read it before the next election, as we're ramping up, even if it's to the midterms, as we're ramping up. I really think this is an important book for people to read. And then the other one I have is The Rooster House, My Ukrainian Family Story by Victoria Bellam, or Bellam, I don't know. So this is very much a family story. It's kind of memoir, but it's more about the family. This book is actually a lot of things. So Victoria Bellam, that's not actually her name, but she has she talks about that she adopted the name to write this book. I think she writes journalism. She's a freelance writer under a different name, but she was born in Ukraine and lived there until she was a teenager. And then she immigrated to the United States with her mother and stepfather. And then her father and stepmother also immigrated kind of separately. And so she finished her growing up, went to college in the United States, got married, and then her husband's job took them to Brussels. She's a freelance writer. She can write anywhere. And she's in Brussels, and she still has family, and she'd been back a couple times to Ukraine, but she really, she was really feeling the need to go back and see her grandmother. And then this is in 2014, which was the second to most recent time Putin invaded the Ukraine. And so there's that going on in the background. We cover a lot of things here. So she talks about her relationship with family members. And so she's staying with her grandmother, and she's honest about their relationship, because it's not it's not an easy relationship. And she's very honest about that and why it is. And then she talks about kind of the way life is in Ukraine. She starts to find things out about her family that she wants to investigate. And you start seeing the lingering influence, both of the Soviet era on Ukraine, but also World War II. So you have all of that. There's a little bit of a true crime element to it. She's dealing with grief over her father's death. There's a lot going on in here, and that could be a mess. But the way this book is structured and the way she wrote it, it works really, really well together. So 5-star, highly recommend this one. It is The Rooster House, my Ukrainian family story. The Rooster House, by the way, is the building in their town that was like the head of the KGB or something, and bad things happened in it. So there you go. I love that one. So those were my 5 stars. I didn't do any like booktube events this month, but I did have 2 buddy reads plus a group read. So I had The Examiner with Lori at Books, Ink and Paper, and Elanor Olaf is Completely Fine with Suey, and then my Ántonia on my Discord group. Now, let's go over my year stats, and then I'll go into my year goals. I read 198 books this year, and part of me was like, can I squeeze in 2 Amazon original stories and get it to 200? Do I want to be that person who read 200 books? I don't know. So I cut it off at 198, which was good because it took me a long time to get these stats together. My goal was 165, so I did well on that. My owned TBR count, kind of after I did a little bit of unhauling of just a couple things, and putting everything together and kind of correcting my spreadsheet. So the numbers, if you are one of those people who goes between my videos, don't do that. Don't do that anyway. But if you were to like compare numbers and things don't add up, that's why there was a little bit of housekeeping in there. My TBR count is at 863 owned TBR. That's 304 books in print. Actually, do I have it in here? No. Oh yeah, I did. I've started to break out audiobooks. I haven't done that this year. I did it here, but I haven't done it this year because of the way the spreadsheet was that I was using. But the new spreadsheet makes it easy to break out audiobooks, so I'm going to include those now too. 304 books in print, 492 ebooks, and that's 128 on Kindle and 364 on Kobo, and then 66 audiobooks, 15 on Audible and 51 on Libro. And that number, where is it? 863. That is the number for 2025. Actually, 862. My goal, again, that I did not make this year, not even close, but I'm doing it again for 2025, is at least, I want to end the year with no more than one less book that, if that makes sense, no more than 862 books on my TBR, because I finished starting the year with 863. So I want at least one less book. That's one of my goals. Now let me go through my 2024 reading goals. So first was 165 books. I read 198. One was to have my own TBR less than 828. That didn't happen. It's 863. That is greater than 828. So I failed. And someone's beeping me. 35% of my books by own voices authors did not achieve that. I was at 26.3%. I believe, if I remember correctly, for 2025, I have changed that to 30%, which I should be able to do. If I am really put my mind to it, I should be able to do it. And then I wanted at least 15% of my books being nonfiction, and I did really well. I had 25.3%, so succeeded on that one. Less than 50% of my books by authors from the United States, 49.5. Just made it, like right there. And I'm going to keep that goal for next year. As I said, 49.5. And that was a little bit determined on my part when I was kind of picking stories, like right at the end. It was like, I picked up the Agatha Christie because she's not a U.S. author. And the Frederick Bachman, not a U.S. author. So I'm like getting that right under 50%. And then I had 2 goals that I deleted. The first one, was to cut my NetGalley queue, and I broke up with NetGalley, so it was just a moot point. I don't do NetGalley. We don't work well together. And the other one was this whole thing about trying to read certain amounts of my book of the month books. I made the goal so complicated that I had no way of actually measuring it. So I failed. Whatever it was, I failed at it, but I don't even know how I could have measured it. So we just deleted that one. Again, my goal for 2025 on this one for Book of the Month is to do their challenge, to complete their challenge. That's my goal, that they can figure it out. So those were gone. And then I wanted to read 300 new to me short stories, and I read 263. So not quite 300, but that's a good amount. I'm not doing a goal like that for 2025, but I am going to continue to read short stories because I enjoy them quite a bit. But 300 was a bit much because there were times when I had to kind of put the short stories aside to read other things. So now I know 300 is too much. 250 is a good goal, but I'm not going to make it a goal. And then I had two like easy ones to mark off. One was to read or listen to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which I did on March 14th, and to reread at least one book by Jane Austen, and I read Persuasion. So I got those done. So of my 10 goals, I dumped 2 of them. So we're at 8 goals. And then I made 1, 2, 3, 4. I made 5 of the goals and didn't make 3. So still over 50%. That's pretty good. And there we go. That's a wrap, folks. That's a wrap on 2024. You'll be seeing this January 2nd. So you'll see it in 2025, but we're done. I'm going to load this up and get it on my Dropbox. I'm going to edit it and get it up there. And then I'm going to ring in the new year by watching Wicked, because that's what we're going to do. So happy New Year, everybody. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the new year. Bye-bye.